Sam was a quiet man who liked to live a simple life. He had worked for years in the city and saved enough money to buy a small piece of land near a peaceful lake. The place was calm, filled with tall trees, clear water, and singing birds. It was the perfect spot for him to rest after leaving his busy job behind. He built a small cabin there and enjoyed his days fishing, walking along the shore, and reading books on his porch. Not far from his cabin, a group of houses stood together in a neat circle. Those homes were part of a local HOA, also known as a homeowners association. The HOA was managed by a woman named Karen. She was known for being strict, controlling, and always wanting things her way. She would walk around the neighborhood every morning, checking if people followed her rules about lawns, fences, and even the color of their mailboxes. Sam's cabin, however, was not part of the HOA. His land was separate and older, bought long before the association was created. Because of this, he was free from Karen's rules. He liked that freedom. To him, the lake was a place to breathe fresh air and live peacefully, not a place to argue about mailbox paint. One bright morning, Sam was fixing his small dock when he saw Karen walking toward him. She wore her usual wide-brimmed hat, carried a clipboard in one hand, and looked as if she was on an important mission. Sam wiped his hands and greeted her politely. "Good morning," he said. Karen gave him a stiff smile. "Hello. I am the president of the Lakeview HOA. We noticed you are new here, and I came to talk to you about joining our association. All lakefront properties must be part of the HOA. It keeps things in order." Sam raised his eyebrow but kept his calm tone. "Thank you for stopping by. But I am not part of the HOA. My land is separate. I checked the records before buying. I am free from those rules." Karen's smile disappeared quickly. She tapped her clipboard and said firmly, "Every property near this lake should follow our rules. We maintain the walking paths, organize events, and make sure the area looks perfect. It is only fair that you contribute as well." Sam shook his head. "I respect what you do, but my cabin does not fall under your control. I prefer to live quietly, without any extra meetings or fees." Karen's eyes narrowed. She was not used to being told no. "If you refuse to join, it will cause problems. The neighbors will not be happy. We can even call the authorities if you do not cooperate." Sam gave a small smile. He was not worried. "I am not breaking any law. You can call whoever you want, but I will not join. Please understand that this land is mine, and I plan to keep it that way." Karen pressed her lips tightly and turned away without another word. She marched back toward the houses, her clipboard shaking in her hand. That evening, Sam sat on his porch with a cup of tea. He thought about the encounter. He had dealt with people like Karen before in the city, people who wanted to control everything around them. He had moved here to escape that kind of life. He hoped she would let the matter go, but deep inside, he doubted it. The next few days were calm. Sam spent his time fishing and enjoying the quiet sounds of nature. But one afternoon, while he was tending to his garden, he heard loud voices near the road. Curious, he walked closer and saw two police officers standing with Karen. She pointed toward his cabin, speaking quickly and waving her arms. The officers walked over to Sam. One of them, a tall man with a kind face, spoke first. "Sir, we received a call from the HOA president here. She says you are refusing to follow the rules of the neighborhood and causing disturbance." Sam remained calm. "Officers, I am not part of their association. My property is outside of the HOA. I have the documents to prove it." Karen interrupted, her voice sharp. "He is lying. All properties around this lake belong to the HOA. He is trying to avoid paying his share. That is not fair to the rest of us." The officer raised his hand to stop her. "Ma'am, please let him speak." Sam nodded and went inside his cabin. He returned with a folder of papers, including the deed and county records. He handed them to the officers. They looked over the documents carefully. After a few minutes, the tall officer nodded. "Sir is correct. His land is not part of the HOA. You cannot force him to join." Karen's face turned red. She tried to protest, but the officer shook his head. "This is a legal matter, and his rights are clear. If you continue to harass him, you could face consequences." The officers handed the papers back to Sam and wished him a good day. Karen stood frozen, her jaw tight, as if she had swallowed something bitter. She stormed away without another word. Sam sighed with relief. He thought the matter was settled. But as he looked at Karen's angry figure disappearing down the road, he had a strange feeling. Something told him this was not the end. After the police left, Sam hoped Karen would stop troubling him. For a few days, life went back to normal. He woke early, listened to the birds singing outside his window, and spent his afternoons fishing by the lake. The calm water reflected the blue sky, and the breeze carried the fresh scent of pine trees. It was exactly the peace he had dreamed of when he bought the land. But peace never lasted long when Karen was nearby. From her porch across the lake, Karen often stood with her binoculars, watching Sam's cabin. She made notes in her clipboard, scribbling down every detail about his garden, his dock, and even the color of his roof. She was not satisfied with the police's answer. In her mind, Sam was an outsider who did not belong. One morning, Karen gathered the HOA members for a meeting at her house. The living room was filled with neighbors sitting on neat chairs, sipping tea, and listening as she spoke. "We have a problem," Karen began firmly. "That man, Sam, refuses to join our association. He is using the lake, walking on the paths, and yet he does not pay a single fee. It is unfair to the rest of us." A neighbor named Paul raised his hand. "But the police said he is not part of the HOA. We cannot force him." Karen shook her head sharply. "The police only follow papers. But we must think about the spirit of our community. If we allow one person to break away, others might do the same. Soon there will be chaos. Do you want broken fences, uncut grass, and boats that do not match in color?" The neighbors looked at each other, uneasy. Some nodded in agreement, while others stayed silent. They knew Karen had a habit of exaggerating, but few dared to oppose her openly. Karen leaned forward, lowering her voice. "If he refuses to follow our rules, then we will make life uncomfortable for him. Perhaps then he will realize it is easier to join us than to fight." The meeting ended with half-hearted claps. Some neighbors left with worried faces, but Karen felt proud. She believed she had set a plan in motion. Meanwhile, Sam had no idea what was being discussed. He was busy planting flowers near his porch, enjoying the quiet life he had worked so hard to create. He noticed that some neighbors no longer greeted him as warmly as before. When he waved, they only gave short nods or turned away quickly. One evening, Sam was sitting on his porch with a book when he heard voices outside. He walked toward the road and saw a few people placing a large wooden sign near his driveway. It read, "HOA members only, private road." Sam frowned. His driveway was on his own land, and no one had the right to block it. He walked over calmly. "Excuse me, this is my property. Please remove that sign." The neighbors avoided his eyes. One of them muttered, "Karen said it is for the good of the community." They hurried away before Sam could reply. The next morning, Sam removed the sign and stored it in his shed. But when he returned from fishing later that day, another sign had been placed there, this time with bright red paint. It became a strange game. Every time Sam took down the sign, another appeared. He stayed calm but grew tired of the constant tricks. A week later, matters grew worse. Sam came out of his cabin one morning to find his dock covered in bright orange notices. They were papers from the HOA, declaring that his dock violated community standards and had to be rebuilt in a matching style. Sam tore down the notices and sighed. He knew they held no power over him, but it was becoming clear that Karen would not stop. That evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Sam decided to visit the county office. He carried his folder of documents and spoke to a clerk, explaining what was happening. The clerk listened carefully and checked the records again. "You are correct," the clerk confirmed. "Your property is outside of the HOA. They have no legal right to control you. If they keep bothering you, you may file a formal complaint. In fact, since you own the land, they are technically your tenants." Sam blinked. "My tenants?" The clerk smiled. "Yes. When you purchased this land, you bought more than just the cabin. The HOA homes are built on lots that are leased from the larger property owner. According to the records, you are that owner now. Which means, technically, they pay rent to you." Sam stood silent, processing the information. He had bought the land because he loved the lake, not for control or money. He never looked too deeply into the details beyond his cabin's space. But now he realized he held more power than he thought. On his walk back home, he felt a mix of surprise and amusement. Karen had called the police on him, tried to bully him, and placed signs at his driveway, not knowing the truth. She believed she ruled the lake, but the papers showed otherwise. As he reached his cabin, Sam looked across the water at the neat houses standing under the evening sky. He knew Karen would soon come up with another scheme. What she did not know was that the game had already shifted. The landlord was not her enemy. The landlord was him. Sam spent that night thinking about what the clerk had told him. He sat by his small table with a lamp burning softly, the documents spread before him. The words were clear. The land near the lake had once belonged to a single owner, and when Sam bought it, he became the new owner of all that property. The HOA homes were built later, but the people living there still paid rent for the ground their houses stood on. He leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. He had never planned to be anyone's landlord. He only wanted a quiet life by the lake. But now he understood why the papers had looked so heavy with details when he signed them. Karen, however, had no idea. She thought she was the one in charge. That thought made Sam almost smile. The next morning, Sam walked to the lake with his fishing pole. He waved at a neighbor named Paul, who hesitated for a moment before walking over. Paul looked worried but also curious. "Morning, Paul," Sam said kindly. "Morning," Paul replied, scratching his head. "Listen, Sam, I need to tell you something. Karen is planning another meeting about you. She says if you will not join the HOA, they might try to block you from using the lake." Sam raised an eyebrow. "The lake is part of my land. They cannot block me." Paul lowered his voice. "I know. But Karen speaks loudly, and many neighbors follow her because they are afraid of her. I thought you should know." Sam gave him a thankful nod. "I appreciate your honesty." Paul glanced around, then whispered, "To be truthful, most of us are tired of her rules. She fines us for small things. Last month she told me to repaint my fence because the shade of brown was wrong. But nobody dares stand against her. She enjoys the power." Sam listened quietly. He could see Paul was nervous even speaking about Karen. That told him how strong her grip over the community was. Later that week, the HOA gathered again at Karen's house. Sam did not attend, but Paul told him what happened. Karen had stood at the front, declaring that Sam was dangerous for the order of the neighborhood. She warned that if he refused to obey, soon the lake would be filled with messy docks and broken boats. She demanded the members vote on a plan to pressure Sam. Some people nodded, but others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Still, no one openly challenged her. Karen's voice was sharp, and her eyes seemed to pierce anyone who disagreed. But Sam was calm. He had a plan now. The following day, Sam invited Paul and two other neighbors, Anna and Mark, to his cabin. He placed the land records on the table and let them read. Their eyes grew wide as they went through the pages. Anna whispered, "So you are the actual owner of the land under our homes?" Sam nodded slowly. "Yes. I did not know at first. But the county confirmed it. The HOA runs activities and makes rules, but the ground is still mine." Mark shook his head in disbelief. "Karen always said the HOA owned everything. She told us we had no choice but to follow her." Sam's voice was steady. "The HOA can make rules if you all agree, but they cannot control me. And they cannot force you to pay for things you do not want. You are tenants. That means I am your landlord, not Karen." The three neighbors looked at one another. It was as if a curtain had been lifted. For years, they had believed Karen's words without question. Now they saw the truth in black and white. Paul spoke first. "We should tell everyone. People are afraid of her, but if they know the truth, they might stand up." Sam thought for a moment. "I do not want a fight. I only want peace. But Karen needs to understand that her control is not as strong as she believes. If more neighbors know, she will lose her power naturally." The group agreed. Over the next few days, Paul quietly shared the information with other residents. Some were doubtful at first, but when they saw the documents, their doubt turned to surprise. Word spread quickly, though carefully, because no one wanted Karen to hear too soon. Karen, however, sensed something was happening. She noticed neighbors whispering to each other when she walked by. She noticed fewer people attending her morning rounds. Even when she complained about a garden that was too wild, the owners only nodded politely and ignored her demands. One afternoon, Karen marched to Sam's cabin again, clipboard in hand. She knocked hard on the door, and when Sam opened, she spoke in her usual firm tone. "Listen, you cannot keep causing trouble here. The HOA voted that you must repaint your dock and attend our monthly meetings. If you refuse, there will be consequences." Sam looked at her calmly. "Karen, I have no reason to follow your orders. My land is not under the HOA." Karen lifted her chin. "That is not true. All the land here belongs to the HOA." Sam stepped aside and placed the folder of papers in her hands. "Read this." She scanned the documents, her face tightening with each line. She flipped through the pages quickly, as if hoping to find a mistake. But there was no mistake. The county records were clear. When she looked up, her expression had changed from confidence to disbelief. This cannot be right. I am the president. I am in charge." Sam's voice was firm but gentle. "You are the president of the HOA, but I am the owner of the land. You have been making rules without understanding who truly holds the rights here." Karen's hands trembled as she closed the folder. She wanted to shout, but the words caught in her throat. She turned sharply and walked away without answering. As Sam watched her leave, he knew the real storm was just beginning. Karen was not the kind of person who would accept defeat quietly. Karen returned to her house with her face burning red. She paced around her living room, gripping her clipboard tightly. The papers Sam had shown her kept replaying in her mind. The thought that she was not the true authority by the lake made her furious. For years, she had ruled the community with her rules and inspections. Now, suddenly, the very ground under her feet belonged to Sam, the quiet man she had tried to control. She refused to accept it. That evening, Karen gathered her closest supporters at her home. The room was filled with her usual allies, people who had followed her instructions for years without question. She slammed the clipboard down on the table and spoke with a sharp voice. "Neighbors, we have a problem. That man Sam is trying to spread lies. He claims he owns this land and that we are his tenants. He wants to destroy the order of our community. Some gasped, while others exchanged doubtful glances. One man asked quietly, "But Karen, I heard he showed papers from the county office. They say it is true." Karen's eyes flashed. "Papers can be forged. He is trying to trick us. If we allow him to continue, he will ruin everything we have built." She then leaned closer and lowered her voice. "We must make him so uncomfortable that he leaves on his own. If he goes away, all of this will be behind us." The group murmured in agreement, though not all sounded convinced. Karen's voice was strong, and many still feared to go against her. Meanwhile, Sam carried on with his calm life. He repaired his dock, watered his flowers, and enjoyed the cool evenings by the lake. But he noticed changes around him. Strange things began to happen. One morning, he found his mailbox knocked over. Another time, his trash cans were tipped and scattered across the road. At night, he heard footsteps near his porch, but when he stepped outside, no one was there. Sam knew it was Karen's doing, but he chose not to react with anger. Instead, he quietly recorded every incident, taking photos and writing notes. He wanted evidence, not arguments. The neighbors, however, began to see through Karen's actions. Paul told Sam that people were whispering about the strange accidents. "They know it is her," Paul said. "She is losing respect. The more she pushes, the more people doubt her." One evening, Sam invited a few more neighbors to his cabin. He offered them tea and cookies, then carefully explained the truth again, showing the records. The neighbors listened closely, nodding as they saw the official stamps and signatures. Anna spoke softly, "We have lived under Karen's rules for so long. I thought it was the only way. But now I see we were afraid for nothing. She has no power compared to you." Sam smiled kindly. "I do not want power. I only want peace. You all can live freely, without unnecessary rules. I will never force you. But you should not let fear control you anymore." The neighbors left that night with lighter hearts. Word spread faster than before. The quiet man by the lake was not just an outsider but the true landowner. More and more people began to avoid Karen's inspections and ignored her warnings about fences or gardens. Karen noticed the change quickly. She saw how neighbors who once hurried to greet her now walked the other way. Her notices, once obeyed, were left crumpled or tossed aside. Even her closest allies no longer seemed as loyal. Her frustration grew. She believed Sam was turning everyone against her. In truth, it was her own harshness that had planted seeds of rebellion. Finally, Karen decided to take one bold step. If she could not control Sam with rules or tricks, she would try to defeat him with legal action. She sat at her desk late into the night, writing a long complaint. She claimed Sam was disturbing the peace, refusing to follow community standards, and damaging the harmony of the neighborhood. She sent the complaint to the county office, expecting officials to side with her as they always had in the past. Weeks later, the county called a public meeting to review the matter. The residents gathered in the community hall, filling the seats until the room buzzed with voices. Sam arrived calmly with his folder of documents. Karen sat in the front row, her arms crossed, her chin lifted high. The county officer stood at the podium. "We are here to discuss the complaint filed by the HOA president, Karen, against Mr. Sam." Karen rose quickly. Her voice rang across the hall. "This man refuses to follow our rules. He is destroying our community by rejecting our authority. If he stays, everything we worked for will collapse." Murmurs filled the room, but many neighbors looked away, no longer as eager to support her. Then Sam stepped forward. He spoke clearly and calmly. "I respect my neighbors, but I am not part of the HOA. Here are the county records proving that my land, and the land under these homes, belongs to me. I never plan to control anyone. I only want peace." But I cannot allow false claims to continue. He handed the documents to the officer, who reviewed them carefully. The room was silent as the officer read aloud, confirming every detail. Finally, the officer said firmly, "The records are clear. Sam is the legal owner of this land. The HOA has no authority over his property. In fact, the HOA itself operates under lease agreements connected to him." Gasps echoed through the room. Neighbors turned to each other, whispering in shock. The truth, once hidden, was now spoken aloud for everyone to hear. Karen's face went pale. She tried to argue, but her voice shook. The officer raised a hand and said, "Ma'am, the matter is settled. Further complaints without basis will not be accepted." Sam looked around the room. Many eyes met his with respect, while others simply nodded quietly. For the first time, Karen had been publicly challenged and defeated. But as she sat back in her chair, her fists clenched tightly. Her pride would not let her accept the loss. She was already thinking of her next move. The community meeting had shaken everyone. For the first time, Karen had not won. She had stood at the front of the hall, declaring her power, only to be proven wrong by official records. Neighbors who once nodded at her words now whispered behind her back. But Karen was not a woman who accepted defeat. That evening, as the sun set over the lake, she sat by her window with her clipboard on her lap. Her eyes burned with frustration. She thought of all the years she had led the HOA, all the rules she had created, all the people she had corrected. Now one man, living in a quiet cabin, had taken everything away with a folder of papers. She tapped her pen against the clipboard, muttering to herself, "If they no longer respect me, I must remind them why they need me. I must show them what happens without my order." The next morning, Karen began her new plan. She spread word that Sam planned to raise the rent on everyone's land. She told neighbors he wanted to build new cabins and charge high fees. She even whispered that he might sell the land to outsiders, leaving the residents powerless. At first, some believed her. Fear spread quickly, and worried faces appeared on the porches of the neat homes. But soon, Paul and Anna visited house after house, carrying copies of Sam's documents. They explained clearly that Sam had never threatened to raise rent or push anyone away. He wanted peace, not control. Slowly, the lies began to fade. Neighbors grew tired of Karen's warnings. Karen saw this, and her anger deepened. She decided to take a louder step. One afternoon, she organized a lake cleanup event. She announced it with posters on every corner, "Mandatory HOA activity, all residents must join. Refusal will bring penalties." The day of the event, Karen stood proudly with her clipboard, waiting for the neighbors to arrive. But the crowd that gathered was smaller than usual. People stood with folded arms, glancing at each other. There was hesitation in their eyes. Sam arrived too, holding a bag for trash, though no one had asked him to come. He walked calmly, greeting people with a warm smile. His presence made Karen stiffen. "Why are you here?" she demanded. "This is an HOA event. You are not a member." Sam's voice was steady. "Cleaning the lake is good for everyone. I am part of this community even if I am not part of the HOA." The neighbors nodded softly. Karen's jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. "Very well. Let us begin." As the group worked along the shore, Karen tried to give orders. "You, pick up near the dock. You, clear those branches. You, move faster." But the neighbors did not obey as quickly as before. Some ignored her and worked where they pleased. Others followed Sam, who quietly picked up trash without telling anyone what to do. By the end of the day, the shore was cleaner, but Karen's control had crumbled further. People laughed and chatted with Sam, thanking him for joining. They began to see that the lake did not need strict rules to stay beautiful. That evening, Karen returned home furious. She slammed her clipboard onto the table. "They are slipping away," she whispered. "If I do not act now, I will lose everything." Her final plan came to her like a spark. She would hold an emergency HOA vote. She would propose a new rule: any resident who refused to follow the association would face heavy fines and possible removal. She believed that if she showed strength, people would fall back in line. Within days, flyers appeared on doors: emergency HOA meeting, attendance required. When the night arrived, the hall filled once again. Karen stood at the front, her shoulders straight, her eyes fierce. She spoke loudly: "Neighbors, our community is falling apart. Rules are being ignored. If we do not act, the lake will be ruined. I propose a new law: anyone who refuses HOA authority will be fined until they comply." The room went silent. People looked uneasy. Then Paul stood up from his seat. His voice shook, but he spoke clearly. "Karen, we respect the lake. But we are tired of endless rules. We are tired of fines for fences, fines for paint, fines for grass. You told us we had no choice. But now we know the truth." Anna rose beside him. "Sam is the landowner, not the HOA. You hid that from us. You acted like you owned everything when you did not." Murmurs spread across the room. Mark added, "Sam has never forced us to do anything. He only wants peace. Maybe that is what we need." Karen's face turned pale. She slammed her hand on the podium. "You fools! Without me, this place will fall apart. He will destroy everything you built." But before she could continue, Sam stood calmly from the back of the room. He did not raise his voice, but his words carried clearly. "I do not want to destroy anything. I love this lake as much as you do. I never asked for control. You can choose how to live here, but you should not be ruled by fear. The land is mine, yes, but your lives are your own. I will never raise your rent. I will never sell your homes. All I want is peace." The neighbors listened in silence. Then, one by one, they began to clap. The sound grew louder until the hall echoed with it. For the first time, the people openly stood against Karen. Her hands trembled as she gripped the podium. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for support, but none came. Even her closest allies stayed seated, clapping along with the others. Karen lowered her head, defeated. The power she had clung to for years was slipping away like water through her fingers. Sam did not smile. He only gave a small nod of respect to the neighbors. He knew Karen was not finished yet. But he also knew the community had changed. For the first time, they had chosen freedom over fear. Karen had lost control in front of the entire community. The sound of applause for Sam still rang in her ears long after the meeting had ended. She had walked home quickly, her face pale, her clipboard pressed tightly against her chest. For years, she had been the voice of authority by the lake. Now, in a single night, her neighbors had turned away from her. But Karen was not the type to give up. Defeat only made her more determined. In the days that followed, she stayed inside her house, watching from her window as neighbors greeted Sam warmly. Children waved at him when he walked by. Families stopped to talk to him by the shore. People who once avoided him now sought his advice. The respect that Karen had always demanded, Sam received naturally. Her frustration grew until it became a storm inside her mind. She told herself, "If I cannot rule them with rules, then I will scare them into needing me again." One night, under the cover of darkness, Karen crept out with a bucket of paint. She painted large, angry words on a wooden board and hammered it near the main road: "Warning, land dispute. Community in danger." The next morning, neighbors gathered around the sign, confused. Some shook their heads, others whispered. Sam arrived and calmly removed it, placing the board in his shed. He did not raise his voice or accuse anyone. He simply told the neighbors, "Do not worry. Everything is safe." But Karen did not stop there. She began spreading new rumors. She told people that Sam planned to evict families. She whispered that he had spoken to developers who wanted to tear down the homes and build luxury cabins. The lies made some residents uneasy, but many no longer believed her. Paul, Anna, and Mark quickly visited homes again, reminding everyone of Sam's promises and showing the county documents. Still, the atmosphere became tense. Sam noticed the tension but stayed patient. He knew fear was Karen's last weapon. A week later, things took another turn. Sam was walking back from the lake when he noticed broken glass scattered near his porch steps. Someone had smashed a bottle in the night. The next morning, he found his garden trampled, flowers crushed under heavy footsteps. He sighed and wrote everything in his notebook, adding photos for proof. He refused to be angry. Instead, he reminded himself that Karen's desperation only showed her weakness. Meanwhile, Karen planned something bigger. She called her remaining allies, just 3 people now, into her living room. Her voice was sharp, filled with bitterness. "He has made fools of us. He has turned everyone against me. If we cannot break him with rules, then we must show everyone that life without me is dangerous." One neighbor asked nervously, "What do you mean?" Karen leaned closer. "We will cause trouble around the lake. Broken fences, scattered trash, maybe even damage to the docks. Then everyone will panic. They will come back to me, asking for order. They will beg for the HOA to protect them again." Her allies shifted uneasily. They were loyal, but her plan sounded risky. Yet they were too afraid to argue. That night, strange things happened around the community. A boat was untied and drifted into the middle of the lake. A row of mailboxes was knocked down. Branches were scattered across the walking path. In the morning, neighbors were alarmed, but instead of running to Karen, they went to Sam. They trusted him now. Sam listened patiently, wrote down details, and promised to help. Then, he visited the county office again and handed over all his notes and photos. The officer listened carefully and said, "You have enough evidence to file a complaint. If the HOA president is behind this, she may face serious consequences." Sam nodded but asked, "Please, give her one more chance. I want peace, not punishment." The officer agreed, though he warned, "If this continues, we will have to act." Back at the lake, the neighbors began working together without Karen. They repaired the mailboxes, tied boats more securely, and cleared the paths. For the first time, the community acted like a true family, helping one another without fear of fines or rules. Sam joined them, smiling quietly as he hammered nails and carried wood. Karen, however, watched from her window, her face pale with disbelief. She had caused trouble to prove her importance, but instead of begging for her leadership, the neighbors had turned to Sam. They had solved problems without her. That evening, she stormed across the road to Sam's cabin. She did not knock. She barged onto his porch, pointing her finger at him. "This is all your fault," she shouted. "You have ruined me. I gave this community order. I gave them protection. Without me, they will fall apart. You think you are their hero, but you are nothing but a liar." Sam stood calmly, his voice steady. "I never lied, Karen. The truth was always there. You wanted control, but people do not need control. They need trust. They need peace." Karen's voice trembled. "They were mine to lead. They respected me." Sam shook his head gently. "They feared you, Karen. Respect is not built on fear. It is built on kindness." For a moment, her anger faltered. Her eyes darted around as if looking for support, but there was none. A small group of neighbors had gathered nearby, watching the scene quietly. Their faces showed no fear, only disappointment. Karen's hand lowered. Her voice grew softer, almost broken. "Without the HOA, what am I?" Sam did not answer. The silence itself was the answer. Karen turned sharply and walked away into the night, her shoulders heavy. The neighbors looked at Sam. One of them said softly, "You have changed this place. We are no longer afraid." Sam gave a small nod. He knew Karen's fight was nearly over. But he also knew the final choice was still hers. Would she accept peace, or cling to a power that no longer existed? The next morning, the lake sparkled under the rising sun. Sam stood on his porch, sipping tea, watching the gentle waves lap against the shore. For the first time in weeks, the air felt completely calm. The neighbors were moving freely, smiling and greeting one another without fear. It was a new day for the community. Karen stayed inside her house, her mind heavy with thoughts. The defeat at the emergency HOA meeting and the repeated failures of her last schemes had left her exhausted. She sat in silence, staring at her clipboard and the neat little rules she had once cherished. She realized the control she had clung to was gone, replaced by something she could not manage: respect for honesty and kindness. Across the lake, Sam began his morning chores. He repaired a small section of the dock, checking ropes and securing the boards. The neighbors came by one, offering help and chatting with him casually. Anna brought a basket of fresh bread and cookies. Paul offered to help lift a new wooden railing for the dock. Mark came carrying tools, ready to fix a loose step. Sam smiled at them all. "Thank you," he said simply. "But you don't need to do this because of me. We are all part of this lake. It belongs to everyone." The neighbors nodded, grateful for the peaceful leadership Sam showed. Unlike Karen, he did not demand or threaten. His calm patience had brought them together. Meanwhile, Karen observed from her window. She saw neighbors laughing, working together, and even helping each other carry supplies. She realized her attempts to force control had only pushed them closer to Sam. For the first time, she felt a quiet kind of fear, not of being caught, but of being irrelevant. The next day, she finally stepped outside. The air was crisp, and the morning sun glimmered off the water. Sam noticed her walking slowly toward him and called a gentle greeting. "Good morning, Karen," he said, keeping his voice warm. Karen stopped a few feet away, her eyes lowered. I see now," she said quietly. "I was wrong. I thought control and rules were the same as respect. But I see that they are not." Sam nodded. "It is never too late to change. You have good intentions, but people respond to kindness, not fear." Karen sighed, a small smile forming on her lips for the first time in weeks. "I suppose I have a lot to learn," she admitted. Sam gestured toward the lake. "Then start today. Help the neighbors if you can, not because you must, but because you want to. They will respect you for it." Karen looked at the busy community along the shore. Children were skipping stones, adults were planting flowers and trimming bushes, and everyone seemed lighter than before. She felt something shift inside her, a small, warm feeling that she had not experienced while enforcing rules. Over the next few weeks, Karen slowly joined the community. She helped carry wood for the dock, planted flowers alongside Anna, and even learned to tie boats securely with Mark's guidance. She did not command anyone, but she listened and assisted. The neighbors responded positively. Slowly, her sharp edge softened. Sam continued his quiet leadership. He walked the paths of the lake, checked the dock, and offered advice when asked. People respected him, not out of fear, but out of trust. The lake that had once been tense with conflict now felt like home for everyone. One afternoon, the community held a small celebration. They gathered at the center of the lakefront, spreading blankets, sharing food, and enjoying the warm sun. Sam stood among them, smiling quietly. Karen approached, carrying a basket of fresh fruit. She hesitated for a moment, then offered it to him. "I wanted to help," she said. "I see now that leadership is not about control. It is about caring for people." Sam accepted the basket with a nod. "Thank you, Karen. That is exactly right." The neighbors clapped softly, celebrating not just the beauty of the lake, but the harmony that had returned. Laughter and conversation filled the air, replacing the tension and fear that had dominated for weeks. Karen realized that she no longer needed to rule. She had a place among the neighbors as an equal, contributing willingly instead of demanding obedience. It was a strange but comforting feeling. For the first time in a long time, she felt part of a true community. As the sun began to set, Sam walked to the edge of the lake, looking at the reflection of the orange sky on the water. Karen stood nearby, helping children gather sticks for a small fire. The lake was calm, the neighbors happy, and peace had returned. Sam smiled quietly to himself. The struggle was over. Karen had learned humility, the neighbors had learned freedom, and the lake had found its calm once more. For everyone at Lakeview, life continued not under fear, not under strict rules, but under respect, trust, and simple kindness. The quiet man by the lake had not only kept his home, but he had restored peace and brought the community together. And that, he thought, was the true power of patience and truth.